What's up, wrestling fans here at WrestleZone.com? It's time for the inaugural edition of the Great Debate, Konnan versus Glenn Gilbertti, a new monthly feature where Konnan and Glenn Gilbertti will discuss and debate a certain issue, allowing you, the listeners, to choose sides and see who you think won the argument. I'm Scott Hudson. This week, the subject of the debate, one that everybody's talking about, if the chat room is any indication, the death of WCW. Among the many wrestling deaths over the last few years, that one kind of sticks with all three of us. Many sides have been told regarding what caused that ultimate demise of Ted Turner's World Championship Wrestling, and tonight will be no different. Konnan and Glenn Gilbertti have two completely different opinions on this issue, and we'll hear them in one moment. But first, let me get a couple of things housekeeping-wise off the desk here. First, join us in the live chat room during the course of this broadcast for 1 hour. Go to WrestleZone.com/listen. This is where you can interact with all of the other listeners and give your questions for Glenn Gilbertti and Konnan. Also, if you want to email a question in, no problem. Send it to WrestleZoneRadio@yahoo.com. We're monitoring that address. We will put your questions in there if they, of course, make sense. Please, no questions about the filthy animals. So there you have it. That's how we're going to – now you can communicate with us if you want to. Otherwise, sit back and enjoy this one. Two guys who I respect more than you could possibly know are going to dissect this from top to bottom. The death of WCW, the Great Debate with Konnan and Glenn Gilbertti. Guys, Konnan, welcome.
Yeah, thank you. And I would like to say, just throw out a quick disclaimer. Do not confuse this with the presidential debates, even though I'm sure we will make a lot more sense than some of the candidates up for election. Go wrong, Paul, by the way.
That is a great point, Konnan. I agree with that. Glenn, welcome aboard.
We're not going head-to-head with the Iowa caucus tonight, right?
Yeah.
Actually, we are.
Oh, we are? Oh, good. We should get good ratings.
Yeah, this will be huge. It already is. The chat room is I don't know if it can fill up, but there's a ton of folks in there. Don't forget to join us there if you want to send your questions in. But let's start. Konnan, we'll start with you. Just the luck of the draw. In a sentence or a couple of sentences, what caused the death of WCW?
I would say everything has to go back to the dictator himself, Eric Bischoff. I think his mishandling, his mismanagement, his misallocation of funds, his unwillingness to be able to rein in the egos of the top guys who held back the middle guys and the bottom guys for so long, and him basically giving too much creative control to the wrong people.
So in Konnan's mind, it was the inmates running the asylum aspect of things allowed by Eric Bischoff. I can't disagree with that. Glenn, what do you think?
I just don't think it really had anything to do with the actual. I mean, here's the thing: the place was mismanaged, okay, but we were being mismanaged when we were doing well. I mean, you can understand, Scout. We had a company. Basically, we didn't have any support from Turner for this. When Eric Bischoff went to Ted Turner and told him, I need head-to-head to go head-to-head with him to compete. Basically, Ted Turner gave him the show, but didn't give him like a supporting staff to support it. And what happened was WCW grew so fast, and Turner didn't give us any, didn't give us people in our marketing department, didn't give the company the tools that it needed to grow, and basically just grew too fast. Konnan said, the inmates did run the asylum, but basically the hierarchy of Turner, all the bigwigs, never wanted wrestling to get this big as it was. I mean, they never wanted wrestling to be the number one show on their program. And I don't think so much. I think Eric Bischoff saved WCW more than he did ruin it.
Well, I don't know.
Konnan, what do you think about that?
Well, I don't know if Disco's trying to get a guest appearance on Scott Bale at 45, or he's trying to, be invited over to Jason Hervey's beach parties. But the bottom line is Eric Bischoff is the problem, because even though he came up with the ingenious idea of having Monday Night go head-to-head with Raw and putting on, pay-per-view style matches on free TV, and he upped the ante and he rated most of WWE's best talent. At the end of the day, we lost a lot of money going to places like Sturgis and not charging any money just so he could have a Sunday bike ride with all his best friends and hang out, you know, with the Steiners and Big Boss Man and all that. I mean, he let, you know, guys like Hogan and, you know, Nash and Macho and all these other people hold us back. So to me, it's Eric's fault. I think Turner did help us. You know, they put us on Mondays. They gave us Thunder, you know, and as long as we were making money and giving him good ratings, I'm sure that we would have still been on the air. But he let that place fall apart.
Hey, Konnan, let me ask you this. Are you considering Eric one of the inmates that was running the asylum?
No, he was the warden, and he let the other guys run amok. You know, he let them do what he wanted. I mean, you know, he was always quick to, you know, discipline me and Rey Mysterio and Eddie Guerrero and all of us, but very rarely, when did he ever really discipline Hogan? You know what I'm saying? The guy went out there, hogged all the segments, you know, was trying to fucking sabotage, you know, Hall and Nash, and, you know, Bischoff never did anything to him. He never did anything to the guys on top. You know, he'd have all these meetings like, well, I'm going to make Ric Flair bankrupt. Ric Flair was pretty respected in that dressing room, bro. That's not the type of message we want to hear, that you're so vindictive, you're going to put one of the biggest stars of all time in financial ruins. You know, he was just, you know, he was bad for morale and bad for the company. I mean, for everything good that he did, he turned that $200 million profit, whatever it was. If he wants to take credit for that, he should also take credit for the demise of the promotion.
Glenn, let me ask you this: a question from the email address at WrestleZoneRadio@yahoo.com. Did Goldberg have any impact in this? Did he have too much power in the locker room? Was he becoming another Hogan, egotistical, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera?
Goldberg was was torture to deal with. Okay, so you got to understand. Okay, when you've got a guy, all right, on your roster that doesn't think that he should lose a match because if wrestling was real, he would never lose a match. Okay, do you know that they had to bring, like, here's the problem with Goldberg. Konnan talks about, you know, we beat Goldberg. Bro, what was Goldberg's record at the time? Like 179 and nothing. I mean, what were we going to do? Have this guy beat every single person in WCW for like the next 10 years? The guy had to show at some point some vulnerability, because the bottom line was, at some of the shows, you know, and the decision made to beat Goldberg wasn't one just like to feed, you know, Kevin's ego or anything. He was starting to get booed at some of the shows. Okay, people were starting to get sick of the act because he wasn't involving. Okay, you had to show some vulnerability. You had to beat the guy. Okay, maybe, you know, and like, you know, I mean, Konnan doesn't like, you know, Nash, but I mean, it could have been anybody beat him. But basically, Nash was the biggest guy at the time. You know, he could have had Hogan beat him, but he had so many titles and stuff. But the bottom line is, when there was a situation when it was time for Scott Steiner, when he was getting his big push to beat Goldberg, okay? Goldberg basically refused to do it, brought his lawyers in, okay? He brought his agents in. They had to have a meeting with Russo and I forget I think Eric might have been there, but basically they had to negotiate of why Bill Goldberg had to lose a fake wrestling match, okay, with his agent in there. And the thing that Goldberg told him was, says, you know, what's your problem with putting over Scott Steiner? And he said, if this was real, Scott Steiner would never beat me. And Vince Russo's like, well, okay, that's fine. Go tell Scott Steiner that. It's like, go tell Scott Steiner that. And Goldberg wouldn't do it. So that's, you know, so that's the type of guy. I mean, could you imagine having a roster full of guys having to deal with like that?
We did. And let me go back to Goldberg. I'm sorry. Let me go back to Goldberg. First, let me hit you on Nash, and then we'll go to Goldberg. Nash is a classic opportunist. I mean, even if I don't like him, you know, the guy's charismatic. He's good on the mic, and, you know, he was part of a group that revolutionized wrestling, NWO. So there I put him over. Just because I don't like him doesn't mean I don't know what his strong suits were. But one of his strong suits was being an opportunist. And he, you know, he was very jealous of Goldberg. Bro, I used to ride in the car with them, so I heard everything they said. And he was happy to do that to feed his ego. Just like when Lance Storm came in and he was kind of hot and Kevin went out there and just destroyed him in like 15 seconds. And here's another one, and I don't even know if you know about this, Disco, just to show you what type of prick your friend is. When Chris Benoit was getting his big push from Kevin Sullivan, pre-woman incident, Benoit was going to win some match that Rodman was in. And I heard when Nash went to Hogan, even though he didn't like Hogan, he went and he told them, hey, brother, you know, the USA Today is going to be there. Don't you think that the page in the front should be, you and Rodman and not Rodman and Benoit. So Hogan went and squashed that so Benoit wouldn't win it. Nash, of course, scored points with Hogan and buried Benoit because all he ever did was bury Eddie Guerrero, Chris Jericho, Chris Benoit, Dean Malenko, because I would hear it all the fucking time. So don't give me that shit about Nash. Now, going to Goldberg, he was a pain in the ass. You know, he had a super huge ego. He had no power in the dressing room because he was a fucking complete idiot. He had no respect for the fucking business. And I remember one time, and listen to this, Vince Russo was going to do an angle with him, and I think Disco remembers this, where he wore like a motorcycle helmet or something, and Goldberg was supposed to hit him, unbeknownst to Russo.
Spear through the cage. Spear through the cage, right?
Right. So here comes Russo, who's not a wrestler, you know, like, he's not a wrestler, doesn't know how to take bumps, and doesn't know what it's about to happen. Goldberg went there, and he tried to hurt him or rough him up, because he told everybody in the back, he goes, watch what I'm going to do to Russo. And, that's just so unprofessional. And, him, and if it was a real fight, maybe we should have put Chris Jericho in there with him to see what would have happened.
All right, let me get back to you, Glenn. In Konnan's opinion, it was Eric. It was Eric and the free reign he let everyone have in WCW. I know you've got a different theory. Give me the details on what you think brought about the death of WCW.
Okay, well, you understand, Eric was like in the Turner hierarchy. Now, see, I didn't know all these guys' names, but you had Ted Turner. You had 5 guys beneath Ted Turner, one of them being Brad Siegel, and who was the other guy?
Jamie Coleman.
No, there's not Jamie Coleman this time. What? He had the son that he was in charge of the Hawks too. What the hell was this guy's name?
Bob Dew?
No, not Bob Dew. I don't know. Well, either one. There's a bunch of guys. Okay, you got to understand. Like, these guys never really cared much for wrestling to begin with. Okay, now look at where wrestling was in the Turner Network. Okay, what time was it on?
6 o'clock.
6 o'clock on Saturday night. Okay, so that's about the respect that the show was given. Basically did decent ratings, especially for the time slot. Did great ratings for the time slot. So now it's time to take wrestling and put it on national television in prime time. Okay, well, these guys. Well, Eric is the one that had to get the face-to-face to get this with Ted Turner. He had to go over these guys' heads, get a meeting with Ted Turner to get this show. And Ted Turner basically, he could care less. The guy's a billionaire. If you knew like people that worked in Turner and know how little they made, the whole Turner Network really isn't like some hip, television program. I mean, it's not. The people in production aren't paid that much. The people that worked at the CNN Center weren't paid that much. Basically, you had like a bunch of dictators running the show with a bunch of people, a bunch of peons getting paid nothing to do all the work. So they never wanted wrestling to begin with. So Bischoff basically got the show, and to his credit, because Bischoff really wasn't a creative hip guy. Okay, so what he did was he brought in all these big names, guys like Hogan, Hall, Nash, and everything, and he'd seen the success that they had. So yeah, basically the inmates were running the asylum, because bottom line, Eric didn't have the creative ability to run the show at the level it needed to be run. Like, if you watch a lot of Nitros when it first started, and when we were getting hot, like, watch a lot of the segments on the show. Like, there's something like Konnan would go out there with Sting and Kevin Nash. The three of them would go out there and cut a promo, and really you guys wouldn't say anything. You do the survey, hey, it looks like this town's red and black tonight. They'd be out there for 6 to 8 minutes, basically sending out an open challenge to anybody that wanted to come fight them that night. But they were so over, and like the NWO was so over, it's like, the show didn't have any creativity, and that's because Eric was not a creative guy. So basically what you had is all these top guys lobbying for position on the show, position on the card. They wanted to be like featured. They wanted to be in the top match on the pay-per-view. And basically Eric kind of got, I don't want to say he he made a mistake, but the problem was he's around. Well, go ahead. Were you going to say something?
Konnan?
Yeah, no. Okay, no. But here's what I was saying. So we started having success, right? But the bottom line is the only money we were making was from pay-per-view revenue and ad revenue. I mean, that's it. You saw our marketing department, Tony. What do we have? Like one girl working in there, busting out like about 4 or 5 different types of T-shirts. The company never
you're
really.
Right at that. But listen, Eric should have had if he didn't have the creativity, But he should have had the balls to tell these guys, listen, you keep doing this shit, and I'm going to send you home, I'm going to suspend you, I'm going to fire you. Just like he threw coffee on Eddie Guerrero, just like he told Rey Mysterio if he didn't take his mask off, he was going to fire him. Why didn't he do that shit with the top guys? He let the top guys run amok. And,
I totally agree with that. But the problem is okay, it's not so much Eric ruined WCW, okay? Eric grew WCW beyond the capability that he had to manage the company. That was the problem, okay? Eric Bischoff built something up that it's like, say, bro, if you won the lottery, right, and you want to build a house. The next thing you know, you're living in a townhome that's got 1,500 square feet, and you want to build a house that's got 40,000 square feet. You live in a castle. Well, you're not going to be able to manage it because it's not what you're used to. Eric did not know how to manage a company that big, and it wasn't from him it wasn't from him like his failures in not being able to manage the company. It's like he just grew the thing beyond his capability. He didn't have experience running something like this.
All right. Well, you just made my point for me again. You said Eric his capability. So he wasn't capable of handling the management, i.e. he couldn't handle the top guys. Then A, he should have either gotten somebody to help him manage, and he should have instilled some discipline. There was no fucking discipline there. The wrong guys were always getting disciplined. The wrong guys were always... The wrong guys were... Bro, how many times did you go to a house show, Glenn, and the top guys weren't there? You know, there was one year Sting didn't even work the whole fucking year. You know
I agree. I agree, but the problem is like those are the people in Eric's mind, okay, that he thought would like help him run the company. I mean, he didn't really have. I mean, who's he going to do? Go get some booker? I mean, basically, at the time, Vince McMahon was running the WWE. He had I guess Russo had started writing the show about the time Nitro started, maybe a year after Nitro started. But Russo started writing the show over there, but they weren't doing no business. We basically, professional wrestling was a star-driven business. You know, we basically took all their top stars. You know, we had Hogan. We called it the top 12. You had Hogan, Macho, Luger, Sting, Hall, Nash. Who else we had? We had the Piper, the Giant. Like our roster was so unbelievably top-heavy with legends of the business that Eric figured if he had all these guys around him, that they would have enough ideas to keep the show running. Well, then the next thing you know, we're doing so great, we added other shows, and you know how that is when you're trying to book a show. I mean, Eric helped.
I agree with what you're saying, Disco, but by the same token, he should have known, because he's smart enough to know. First of all, you had all these cliques. You had Ric Flair's clique. You know, you had Kevin Sullivan's clique. You had Nash's clique. You had Hogan's clique, and most of them hated each other. He should have been smart enough to know when Flair went in there to bury somebody, or Nash went in there, or Hogan went in there to go, fuck, I need to control this. Because if somebody like Terrell Owens went up to the owner and started to bury the other talent so they wouldn't get no playing time, I'm pretty sure something would be done about Terrell Owens, but nothing was done in WCW. That's where Eric, I continue, was at fault. He didn't discipline the guys on top who basically held us all back. Because if you remember, when I got suspended from WCW was for making a statement in the USA Today that, you know, the booking committee was pushing all these old guys and they were holding us back, you know. And he was letting that happen, bro.
Let me reset right here. First, WrestleZone.com/listen to get into the chat room. WrestleZone Radio at yahoo.com to email questions for the great debate, Konnan versus Glenn Gilbertti, on the death of WCW. I want to throw these couple of questions, guys, if I may, at you.
Hudson, can I make a quick disclaimer, too? Can I make a quick disclaimer? Because I was just watching a little bit of the Iowa caucus. Do not confuse the fact that Glenn Gilbertti has a big nose and Dennis Kucinich has big ears as them being next of kin. I wanted to get that out of the way.
That was a fantastic point, Konnan.
That was a cheap shot.
Here's a couple of questions, guys. A couple of topics from the email mailbox at WrestleZoneRadio@yahoo.com. I'll throw them at you for your input too. First, the merger between Time Warner and AOL. How much did that impact the death of WCW? And did the downward spiral begin when the Radicals, when Benoit and Malenko and Saturn and Eddie left that fateful week after Starrcade? Was that the beginning of the downward spiral, the merger and the Radicals? Konnan?
Well, yeah, the AOL thing, I'm pretty sure, and Disco would know more than me on this one because he was in creative, but I'm sure that accelerated our demise because I'm sure they saw us with low ratings, probably had no knowledge of what we had done previously, and maybe if they did, they didn't care because wrestling still is what it is, and I'm sure they didn't want, a money-losing thing on their board. And the other thing, I think the problem with the Radicals accelerated after they left, but there was already a big problem before the Radicals left. I mean, that was kind of like the straw that broke the camel's back.
Yeah, the Radicals leaving. Yeah, the Radicals leaving was just that was just like a symptom of all the problems. I mean, that one like a significant event that really hurt our show. I mean, because we still had like so much talent and stuff and everything. But the Time Warner, all you got to do is look at Time Warner's AOL stock. I mean, it just went right through. It plummeted. I mean, there was another you had a merger between two poorly run companies. And basically we had it. It was still our show was still the highest rated show on their programming, and they decided to get rid of it. I mean, like, think about the logic involved with people that have a network. Okay, well, I don't want to watch wrestling. Hell, I don't want to wear wrestling. Let's get rid of it. It's like, well, it's not the second highest rated show on cable TV. Oh, hell, nobody watches wrestling. Well, they actually do watch wrestling. Well, I don't like wrestling. Let's just get rid of it. That's basically the attitude they came in here with, and that's basically the attitude with the people Turner had from the get-go. They didn't want wrestling to be their highest rated show. And in case in point, I think we lost like $60 million one year, right? At a worst point. We were doing bad pay. We weren't getting pay-per-view revenue. Ad revenue was down. So now, they would keep basketball on the network. Still do to this day, basketball lost $120 million in 6 months. Okay? So they keep a product that loses twice as much, gets half the rating, okay, loses twice as much in half the time, gets half the rating as a show that's one of the top-rated shows on cable TV, but it was losing money. So you would think logic would dictate. Go ahead.
Let me ask you something about what Glenn said earlier on. I thought it was a valid point. I don't disagree that the inmates running the asylum aspect of thing played a huge role in the death of WCW, but that was the case when we were the hottest thing going, when we did sell out the first day. What do you think about that, Konnan?
That was the case when when was the first day?
Oh, from the time, Konnan, like you said, you had Eric trying to bankrupt Flair and everything, but we were doing like 5.5s back then. I mean, the ratings were through the roof, and inmates were running the asylum, but we were still beating Vince, and we were the highest rated show on cable TV.
Yeah, but my point is, if you already have a locker room that's low on morale, and Eric's trying to go out there and play the bully, I mean, it's really even worse for morale for somebody like Ric Flair, who was kind of universally liked, even though he had a ton of heat with like Nash and the Steiners and Luger for whatever happened with them from 10 years ago. So they were still bitter at Flair, but most of the dressing room respected him because he was cool. And, for Eric to go out there and say, well, the only people that have ever made money in this business is Hogan, and I think he said Macho and Roddy. I was in the fucking room. I made more money in Mexico than almost anybody in that room. He didn't mention me, and he didn't mention Flair. But he specifically didn't mention Flair because he wanted to stick it to him. And that's when, with Arn Anderson there, he goes, well, I'm gonna bankrupt him. So to me, that type of shit was really bad for morale. So Eric was just, Eric was just responsible because he wasn't controlling the top guys. He wasn't disciplining them. He wasn't suspending them. He wasn't making an example of them. And to the middle card guys, if he wasn't throwing coffee in us or, telling us he was going to fire us, or he even fired you because he didn't want to do some bullshit with Jackie, and then later Jackie didn't want to do something with somebody else. So, I mean, the guy was disciplining the wrong guys, and he was letting the guys on top hold us back. Jericho, Rey Mysterio, Eddie Guerrero, Chris Benoit, they all had to go to Vince to become stars.
Hey guys, let me throw this up here from the email address. This is one we get a lot, and I'm sure you guys get this as you do radio, as you go to indie shows, as you go to reunions or whatever. David Arquette. How does that play into this? Was that the beginning of the end? Was that another symptoms like Chris and Eddie and Perry and Dean leaving?
I'll answer that. It was another. So you got to understand, the ratings stunk before that happened. I mean, people like to like it. You got to understand, we were on a downward rating spiral. Okay, and the problem is when Russo came in, okay, here was one of the main issues where WCW could have basically been saved, or if there was cooperation, we could have helped, okay? Vince came in and started writing a show that was over budget of what WCW was willing to spend, okay? You know, because he writes a lot of TV, he writes a lot of skits, writes a lot of stuff outside the ring, outside the arena, okay? It costs money to do. So when Russo came in, you saw what Russo tried to do right away. He saw the type of mid-card talent we have. He immediately tried to integrate the mid-card guys in with the top guys. So what do you get? Basically, you had the inmates running the asylum before. Now, all of a sudden, this one guy's coming in here changing everything. So, of course, the top guys are not cooperating with Russo, okay? And, you know, everybody knows that, you know, you can say what you want about Vince, but one thing Vince has always done, he tries to have something for everybody on the show, you know, no matter what place in the card you are. And, you know, that didn't sit too well with the top guys because he treated them the same as the rest of the talent, and most of the top guys saw themselves as superior to the rest of us. Well, Eric kind of, you know, was kind of the hands-off, you know, was standoffish in that whole situation. Of course he was going to kind of side with Hogan and stuff and all these guys because those are his boys, you know, I mean, but the bottom line is, like, if Vince could have been given control of the company, it might have had, I mean, we might have been able to change things around, but there was still that crazy, stupid, you know, management issues. Like, we really didn't know who exactly was in charge. And basically, you know, you had just, like, still had a lot of factions. You had a lot of guys that were, you know, like in cliques and stuff and everything.
What's your answer to the question? He asked you about David Arquette.
I'm just saying David Arquette's an insignificant incident because it's still just in the big picture. The rating only dropped like 0.1 or 0.2 that week. I mean, it wasn't like, you know, it wasn't like a demise of the numbers. I mean, we were doing like 2 4s or 2 5. You know, I mean, we weren't. The numbers didn't really make that much of a difference. It didn't cause another significant drop. It didn't cause it. It basically we were just still like just not drawing, and you know it was hard to because at the other show you had The Rock and Stone Cold, you know, still kicking ass.
You are listening to the great debate, Konnan versus Glenn Gilbertti on the death of WCW, and Konnan, the topic du jour is David Arquette.
Right. Well, here's the thing. I'm like Glenn. I respect Vince Russo a lot because he shook things up, thought outside of the box. He takes a lot of undue heat. I think he's lost a lot of his passion for writing. Then again, working with Jeff Jarrett and Dutch Mantell will do that to you. But anyways, he's right. You know, the top guys didn't want to work with Vince. They sabotaged a lot of his shit. Now, this is what I thought about David Arquette. When it first happened, I thought, what's the big fucking deal? This is wrestling. It's fucking fake. Then as I started to read over the years the reactions of wrestlers and fans, how adamant and mad they were, I started to change my mind. I go, you know, maybe Vince was kind of fucked up because I've never even won the world title in the United States. But then I thought to myself, bro, it's all a work. So I go back to what I originally thought. What's the big fucking deal? David Arquette won. They've used Mike Tyson. They've used, you know, Donald Trump. You know, they may not have made him champion, but he was just a prop, you know, and that in itself, I don't think.
That's another thing, bro. It's not like he put the figure 4 on somebody and, you know, it's not like he came in and hit the spear and the power bomb and figure 4 somebody made somebody give up.
Right.
You know, it was a gimmick. It was a publicity event that we thought we could get noticed and get publicity. You know, which it didn't work. But at the time, bro, you had to try things. You couldn't just sit there and like stay the course.
Yeah, you know, sometimes when I read fans, you know, like bearing stuff, I always think to myself, all right, it's very easy to be the armchair quarterback, but you got to sit in a room and come up with shit more than 52 weeks a year because of pay-per-views and maybe a special clash, you know, some special match we might put on TV. And then you got to think of shit to do with the top guys, the middle guys, the bottom guys, and then you got to think of how you can fit in, you know, angles and stuff from the past and celebrities. It's not easy. So it's something they tried. It didn't work as good as they thought. But you know, put all this blame that, well, you know, fuck the you know, the Arquette thing really, you know, ruined the WCW. That's bullshit.
Yeah. Let me ask you this, guys. Let's change gears just a little bit. When we were the hottest thing going, when the NWO, the black and white, that original group, and Konnan, you were in there for that, when that was so hot, and we had lightning in a bottle, did we milk that too long? Did we keep it going for 6 months, a year too long, instead of transitioning to a different overarching angle that we all know Eric liked. He liked to have that angle, that storyline that kind of covered the entire promotion and everyone worked under it. That was the NWO. Did we keep that going too long? Konnan?
Yeah. I just think that everybody knows that once something gets over, you're going to milk it as long as you can until sometimes it reaches a point of oversaturation. That's just human nature. Even if a character on a TV show starts to blow up, you start to give him more lines. But I don't think it was that we milked it too long. I just think we added too many people in there that didn't belong in there. Like, I shouldn't have been in there. Vince Norton shouldn't have been in. There's a lot of guys that shouldn't have been in the black and white. So, if you have a great team, great baseball team, you start bringing all these guys, or, people are going to be like, well, fuck, what happened here? So basically, I think they put in too many people that didn't deserve to be in the NWO.
Here, I got a little bit sort of. I don't think that was so much at the. Here was the problem: is the Wolfpack was getting so hot, okay, and they were really showing up the NWO black and white, okay, and what happened was the angle itself. If you look at this, the story of the NWO, the story is a great story. An organization comes in, it takes over the existing organization. It branches off into two competing organizations, and those two organizations fight each other. The two organizations never fought each other. I mean, we never gave the black and white never went at it with the red and black because Hogan, his little faction and his black and white guys knew that they couldn't hang with Nash and those guys on the mic because like Kevin and then we're burying them every week. And like there was a situation I'll never forget. We were in Colorado, right? And the Wolfpack goes out there at the start of the show. It's Luger, Sting, Nash, and I think I don't know if Hall was maybe it was Macho. I think Hall was doing something else. But they basically cut a promo. Wolfpack's in the house and everything. So later on in the show, Luger goes out there and works. The black and white hit the ring and they beat him up. Hall didn't come out to help him. Sting didn't come out to help him. Nobody, right? So I'll never forget this. There's Nash and Sting and Luger were supposed to go cut a promo later in the show for that. And Eric comes in and goes, what are you going to say in your promo? And Kevin goes, I'm not going to do it. He's like, what do you mean? He goes, what am I supposed to say? He goes, we went after the show and talked about how unified we were, and you guys just went out there and beat a guy down. We stayed in the back. What are we supposed to say? We're using the bathroom? And so instead, Nash and Hogan went out there and cut or Bischoff and Hogan went out there, cut a promo. Well, he should, and from that point on, you never saw the angle between the red and black and the black and white because Kevin knew that Hogan and Bischoff and stuff, everything would just try to fuck him.
Let me move back, if we could, guys, to this merger because in my experience, in my opinion, when I get asked this question, that's where my problem lies and what caused the death of WCW. I'm going to think it's more to do with the merger. When we came in and heard that we had lost television, what was your initial reaction? That we didn't have Nitro, we didn't have Thunder, we didn't have Saturday, we weren't going to have pay-per-views. Did anybody think that Eric was going to be able to buy the company, going to be able to save the company with the Fusion media backing that he had? Disco?
We were just, at the time, it's like everybody was. It was weird. It was like those days were kind of blurry to me because nobody really gave a rat's ass. I had to sit in booking meetings at the time, right, and help write the show and stuff and everything. And I'd sit in booking meetings and we'd call Brad Siegel 4 or 5 times in a day, and he wouldn't return our calls. So, and he was telling us that the whole time we're not selling. So we always knew that the company was going out of business. So basically, we're just sitting there, basically just going in those meetings, just basically cashing paychecks. And I think pretty much everybody that there at that time, we would care more about, we get to the show, we look at the board, see we're wrestling, okay, we're wrestling one of our friends, good, we'll go out there, we're rocking everything. But we couldn't wait for the show to get over so we could go out afterwards. So ultimately, it's like you knew the ship was sinking, but we were going to see, we were going to go down while drinking champagne. That was the attitude of at least the guys I was hanging out with, and I know Konnan was one of them. So it's like, everything we were miserable, but we were miserable together, and we were kind of happy because we're all still we weren't going to let the failure of the company going out of business bring us down and make us make us depressed. We were still going to go have fun.
Right. I just wanted to add to that. That's actually a fact how the Filthy Animals got formed, because originally I knew they were going to bury me and all my friends, so I made a group with my friends, Kidman, Eddie Guerrero, Ray. I tried to stick Disco in the first time, they didn't want it. And then I think Eddie left and Hoovy left, and we brought Glenn in. And so basically our mindset was, fuck it. If you're going to bury us together, we'll have fun, and we'll go out and we'll party. But anyways, as far as the AOL thing, and Fusion and all that, I think everybody, it wasn't a surprise when it happened because everybody saw how bad everything was mismanaged. But I just cannot believe that, Eric made an offer of I don't know how many millions, I'm sure Glenn would know, for WCW, but they gave it to Vince for $2 million. At least Eric would have kept the name alive and kept, that spirit and a lot of the stars. Vince just shit on it and destroyed it.
Yeah, because there's still there's still some head scratching stuff about the sale of WCW. I mean, the book value couldn't have been $2 million. You got to be kidding me. It's like one of the highest rated shows on cable television. Even though we weren't drawing good ratings, it's still one of the highest shows on cable television. And it's like, dude, they just sold it. I just can't, for nothing. I just don't get it.
Let me ask you this one, guys. In that same area, when you look at what the WWF then paid for WCW, was that highway robbery? Was that one of the biggest thievings you've ever seen in your life?
Well, let me say this real quick. I just thought it had to be some money under the table. Like they had to be paying off top management guys a lot of money for a sale like that to happen, which could easily have happened in WCW, because if you saw the way the company was run, I mean, they had toys that like a Chris Canyon toy, a Disco Inferno toy. They would get the bar. You swipe the barcode at the store, and Hulk Hogan would get paid. So it was a shady licensing. A lot of these guys have sued the company for back pay on royalties, and they had to sign a gag order, like they're not allowed to talk about it. Okay, but I know personally some of the guys that sued the company, and they couldn't believe some of the stuff that they found. Just crooked criminal mismanagement of funds.
Konnan, any thoughts on that?
No, I just thought the same thing. Disco said there must have been some sort of payoff, because I don't care what company you are. If you're trying to get rid of a company, you're trying to make money on your investment. So if Eric Bischoff is offering you $20 million, and I don't know if it was more or less, but if he's offering you $20 million and WWE is offering $2 million, what the fuck do you care? I think I've actually heard stuff like they didn't want Eric running it. Well, what do you care? It's not your company anymore. The guy's about to give you $20 million plus, and you don't want it. So who knows, over at WWE maybe called them and said, look, man, give it to us for $2 and we'll give you $8 each under the table. You don't got to pay taxes. Let's get this shit over with. Who knows what happened, but it just seems very bizarre to me, if we're talking about businessmen and business, that somebody would take $2 million over 20.
This is the big debate on WrestleZone.com. Konnan versus Glenn Gilbertti on the death of WCW. If you're joining us on the WrestleZone.com/listen, join us in the chat room as well. You can hear it online. You can stream it. Then you can jump in the chat. You can email us at WrestleZoneRadio@yahoo.com. Your questions for Konnan and Glenn Gilbertti on the death of WCW. Guys, here's one that came from the email address that I thought was a terrific question that came in 20 minutes ago. Could WCW have survived? Was there anything, and I'm talking about maybe at the end of 2000, first of 2001, is there anything that could have saved WCW, or was it, as they say, a fait accompli? Was it gone? It was just a matter of time. Konnan?
Well, I think, like Glenn said, you had to give somebody complete control. Vince never had it. I would have given Vince complete control to let him do what it was that he wanted to do, which he never was able to do. But anyways, and the other thing was I would have started pushing, a lot of the mid-card guys that were more than ready for main event spots. I'm sure that would have helped the company, instead of these lumbering fucking guys that went out there, didn't do shit, complained, held people back, never showed up on time. Fuck all those guys.
And that goes back to your inmates running the asylum argument, Konnan.
Yeah, and it also goes back to Eric not having a leash on them.
Glenn?
Absolutely, the company could have survived. You could have chewed the fat with some of the big contracts, the guys that weren't drawn anymore. You could have, like I said, I always thought, let Vince run the creative and let Terry Taylor run the company. And the guy had the intellectual capability to do it. It didn't take rocket science. Okay? Inject they were pulling money from production at the time we were going out of business. And the MIAs or the Hugh Morris group and everything, they show up one day that they don't have pyro anymore. They had to cut back the budget on pyro. I would say what they need to be done is inject, invest more money in to get back to where we were, and I would say get rid of Thunder. It was a nothing happening show. It was a waste. It was a waste of time. If we could have just done the one Monday night show, the 1 2-hour show on Monday, cut back the cost of the money losing on Thunder, got rid of the fat, chew the fat off of some of the top guys, and have two legit, have a person running creative and a person running the company. Absolutely. I mean, look at the talent base we had, and look at where these guys went in their careers. I mean, you had Jericho, Eddie, Ben Watson. We had about 4 or 5 guys that were future WWE World Champions on our roster. It's not like we couldn't have survived. The fact that it went out of business is unbelievable. Yeah, absolutely, we could have survived. There's no doubt about it.
The big debate continues here on WrestleZone.com. Konnan versus Glenn Gilbertti on the death of WCW. Konnan, let me throw this to you. The legacy of WCW. When in a year from now or 5 years or 10 years from now, when WCW is mentioned, what's the legacy? What's the first memory?
To me, or in the fans' viewpoint?
For the fans.
I don't know. I think everybody has a different take on what WCW meant to them, But to me, when I think WCW, I almost try to think of NWA when I used to watch it as a kid and how fun it was. Like Glenn said, everybody was miserable and everybody wanted to get the hell out of there. You made a lot of good friends in the locker room, but it's just a shame, what happened, because invariably any interview that you ever read, no matter if the guy was making $1 million or $50,000, just about everybody that talks about WCW talks about how miserable it was. And that's a sad thing to say because I actually did have a lot of fun there. But for me personally, I always think of the NWA I watched as a kid, and I don't think too much about when I was there because it wasn't really a good time.
Glenn, what do you think? What's the legacy?
The NWO. That angle. I mean, that's basically what defined WCW in the Monday Night Wars. That and Ricky Rackman hosting the Monday Nitro parties.
That's awesome.
No, seriously. I mean, about WCW's legacy. I think WCW's legacy would be the creation, the formation of one arguably might be the greatest angle in the history of wrestling, the NWO. And I think that's the legacy that it leaves behind.
Yeah, you're right about that.
In my opinion, people still these days that talk about the NWO, And the funny thing about it is, I mean, for friends of mine that I know these days that they're a little bit younger than me, but obviously they were in college when they were watching the show. That they tell me yeah, man, we always used to go to the Nitro. We always used to have Nitro parties. And it's shit, a lot of people, more people watch Monday Nitro than you would think because of the fact that they would promote the Nitro parties. I mean, our rating was probably higher than it should be because there was always groups of people watching the show. That's why we were so popular. I mean, it's just, I don't know. It's unbelievable the place went out of business. But, yeah, I think the NWO definitely is the legacy of WCW.
Yeah, I think when you think, on that point, NWO and, Ric Flair, that to me is, WCW.
This is the WrestleZone.com big debate with Konnan and Glenn Gilbertti. If you're joining us streaming on WrestleZone.com, join us in the chat room at WrestleZone.com/listen, or you can email your questions to WrestleZoneRadio@yahoo.com. Guys, let me throw this out to you. Go ahead, Konnan.
Yeah, let me say this because this is my journalistic pangings making me say this. I would be remiss, what a great word for Latino, albeit a small one, but I would be remiss if I didn't ask, what is the legacy for you because you were also there?
Wow. What I would think would be the legacy of WCW would be, and this is a horrible thing to say, I guess, but it would be a lot of stuff that happened before any of the three of us got there. Ric Flair, Ricky Steamboat, Terry Funk, the Steiner brothers before Scott cut his hair and turned heel. That time, 89, 90, 91, just wonderful things to watch. And then maybe, and then you guys were already there. I wasn't, but in 96 when the NWO formed, at the Great American Bash in Baltimore when Hogan came out, when Kevin powerbombed Eric through the stage. Those are memories that, and Kevin and Benoit, brawl into the ladies' room.
Bro, and you're so right about all of that. But if we would have been able to capture that spirit, like when the NWA was formed, that everybody was thinking, all right, shit's about to turn around. We're about to give WWE a run for their money. We're going to make some more money, and not all the jealousy and backstabbing. People signing contracts that other guys couldn't have more money than them, or people backstabbing each other. But once you start having ratings and money and all that, greed comes into play.
Oh, absolutely. And Konnan, thank you. Your journalistic broadcasting technique leading me right into this segue, and that was a question from the email address, and it comes down to this. The death of WCW, was it business, was it the business, or was it the politics? Konnan, you first.
I don't know. I think it was a combination of both,
Okay. Go on, please. That was the question we had from email.
I don't understand the question. Was it the business or the politics? I still don't.
Was it the wrestling business? Was it just the wrestling business, the nature of it, how cyclical it is?
The politics are in nature of the wrestling business.
Interesting.
I mean, bro, you got to understand. The WWE, they had the, as bad as WCW was, the WWF had the click. I mean, you talk about inmates running the asylum. I mean, these guys had their feet propped up in Vince's office each show, and the rest of the guys were outside the closed door. I mean, like you talk about politics has been around wrestling for years. I mean, it's just, then I guess the answer would be it's the wrestling business, because politics have always been a part of the wrestling business. Inmates have always run the asylum or tried to. I mean, it's not. The thing about it's weird is like a lot of guys when they get popular and they start getting over is they fail to separate their characters from their real life. And they fail to see, like, okay, what is the best thing for this business right now? Instead, they look at what is the best thing for my character right now. And what you have then is that clash, those type of like minds clashing at a show. You have the Hulk Hogan character, the Eric Bischoff character, the Kevin Nash character, the Randy Macho Man Savage character, all trying to figure out how they can get over more on the show. And politicking with each other, burying, like here's the one thing, I think one of my articles I wrote about this or on the message board, for as unbelievable roster that we had of top guys, none of them ever put each other over. I mean, every single one of these guys thought the other guy was the shit. I mean, it's unbelievable. Nobody thought Flair was good. Flair didn't think anybody else was good. Hogan think Nash was good. Hogan didn't think Macho was worth a shit. Macho didn't think Nash was worth a shit. Hall and Nash didn't think Sting was worth a shit. Sting and Luger didn't think Hall and Nash were. I mean, for as over as these guys were, none of the top guys thought any of them were worth a damn. So just imagine that type of atmosphere. And the funny thing about the mid-carders, we all knew we were good. And we were all kind of like, we were kind of like happy for each other sometimes. The top guys, forget it. It was one of the worst professional atmospheres you could put yourself into.
Let me ask you this, guys, again, from the email address. This was a great question. I honestly haven't thought about it, but I guess we kind of have to at least address it, and that is with what Vince has done with ECW. And granted, other than Joey Styles' commentary, I don't think there's anything worth redeeming about that. Is there anything left in the name value, and we talked about the legacy, is there anything left in the legacy of WCW that might make it ripe for a revival, a la ECW? Konnan?
No, I don't know. I think everybody, is either too old to wrestle. Some guys, unfortunately, aren't even with us. I don't think there's enough guys really left. I don't know. What do you think, Disco?
No, not even bro. Who revival of what? They're all. I mean, everybody be too old. I mean, it'd actually be a pretty funny, sad show. It'd be brutal. But if you could do like a reunion of WCW and stuff and everything, and have the guys now that were in their 20s or in their late 30s and early 40s fighting against all the guys in their mid 50s.
Right. It would look like those WWE Legends Royal Rumbles or Battle Royals.
So what I'm hearing is that WCW is dead. There's no revival.
Of course
There's
it is.
nothing
It's
left
done.
to
It's
revival.
done. It's been done. Since
right.
Since
You
6
would
years.
actually-
I mean,
Right. You would actually have to, if you were going to use those letters, you'd probably, have to just reinstitute a whole different plan with different stars, and that's about the only way. I mean, there's nothing left. You know what I'm saying?
well, look at it this way, Scott. Wrestling is written for an 18 to 34-year-old male demographic, right? If you were 18 years old when the Monday Night War started in 1995, okay, you'd be 30 years old now, okay? If you were,
Yeah, at the bottom end of that demographic.
At the bottom end of that. So, bro, I mean, you're talking about a large portion of your demographic has just disappeared that even has any association with WCW. So no, it wouldn't be worth it at all. I mean, you're targeting a market that isn't big enough to generate interest in.
One last question before we start wrapping up, guys. And again, this came from the chat room and from the email. And that is, and it's kind of off topic, but it's worth throwing out there. The WWE now is the 800-pound gorilla. They do what they want. They are the number one. TNA is number two, but far, far down the food chain. Is there anything about TNA, good or bad, that reminds you of WCW, Konnan?
The bad is that they're making a lot of the same mistakes that WCW did. Just not pushing a lot of the good underneath card guys, and and just sometimes a lot of the booking just has a lot of holes in it. They don't even connect the dots and even explain how they got from A to C, much less A to B. But the good thing is just there's another place to work. But as far as the only comparison I can make that's good in the WCW and TNA is that both locker rooms have a lot of good guys in it. But that's all I can think up of.
Glenn, anything?
I don't know. I think TNA is nothing like WCW. It's completely different. The only and here's an issue that I've always thought has an effect on the amount of people that will watch your show. Is I've always
he didn't ask if they were like. He said what similarities can you see, good or bad? Not if they're
none. I don't see. That's what I'm saying. I don't see any similarities because of what the point I'm going to make is. I look at like TNA as kind of like a more modern day type ECW in the visual look of the show. We're more professional production wise looking, but I've always felt that to get the more fans to watch your show, you have to have that big arena appeal. Like Nitro was always filmed in we always filmed in big arenas. Raw's always filmed in big arenas. It's like it just seems like as a fan, like as a television viewer, when you're watching professional wrestling, the more people that are at the show, I think it perceives in your mind that the show is a bigger deal. So I don't really see TNA being even bunched in there with the WCW type show. It's a professional wrestling show that's on television, but it's not like a it can improve. But to get to like that level, it's going to have to become a big arena show. Can it become a big arena show someday? Possibly. But right now, it's still on that smaller, intimate type setting, which I think a lot of people, when they flip on the TV, they don't really see it as that big of a deal.
Guys, let's wrap up the big debate tonight on WrestleZone.com. And Konnan, I'll let you go first. In a couple of sentences, summarize what caused the death of WCW.
I think that was my very first question you asked me. So
it was.
Yeah, I think I answered that at the beginning. Eric Bischoff, his inability to handle the egos of the top guys and his inability to let them not, put obstacles in the mid-card guys' way, giving too many guys creative control and, handing over the reins to people that, weren't even good bookers, bro. Eric Bischoff, to me, bottom line.
Len Gilbertti, what caused the death of WCW?
Two things. First thing is Turner management not wanting the programming on their show and basically undermining it the whole time it existed. And number two, the formation of the LWO and letting Hoovy announce.
The
Oh, we didn't address that. That's an entirely new hour there. But this hour is up, and that's going to conclude tonight's big debate. Fans, thank you for joining us in the WrestleZone.com chat room. You don't want to miss Glenn Gilbertti's column in the exclusive section of the WrestleZone.com forums. 5150 Real Talk with Konnan is in there as well. Two of the most intelligent, well-spoken, well-thought men in professional wrestling. I hope tonight has convinced you that what I've known for years, that these two men, whether they're my friends or not, they need to be running a company somewhere, or at least in creative. You heard tonight that they know what they're talking about, and wrestling needs more men like Glenn Gilbertti and Konnan in positions of creative authority.
I would like to say real quick that Disco does run his own little company. It's called Nambla Apartment Wrestling out of Marietta, Georgia. And,
I did not hear a word of that. All right. Well, that's going to conclude tonight's big debate. You don't want to miss the big debate that we're going to do in the first week of February. We'll have more information about that at WrestleZone.com. You can continue this debate in the forums in the exclusive section with Konnan, with Glenn Gilbertti, and with myself, Scott Hudson. Again, thank you, everyone, for joining us. Konnan, Glenn, it's always a pleasure. Thank you so much for the big debate, and we'll see you next month on WrestleZone.com.
Now we do the little banner like they do on the talk shows when they're about to cut the commercial, they turn the mic down.
Yeah, right. We're still right. All right, cool.
We're out, guys.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks,
All right, later, Konnan. I'll call later on tonight, right?